Welcome everybody from the Ham Lake Area Chamber of Commerce. My name is Z and I'm the Executive Director at the Chamber. So today's event cannot have a live audience due to the public health guidelines. And we want to take some time to thank some people. So thank you to the City of Ham Lake for the use of their facilities. Thank you to TJ with NorthMetroTV for recording today's forum. And our partners, the League of Women Voters, ABC, for providing the moderators and their assistance in making this happen. So we will now proceed with our forum for the State Senator District 31 candidates with our moderator.
Thank you. The League of Women Voters, ABC, also welcomes you to this forum to meet the candidates for Minnesota Senate District 31. This includes part of Andover, all of Bethel, Columbus, East Bethel, Ham Lake, Linwood Township, Nowthen, Oakgrove, and St. Francis in Anoka County, and parts of Isanti County and Sherburne counties. I'm Geri Nelson, co-chair of the League of Women Voters ABC, and I live in Champlin, so I can't vote for either of you. All candidates for this race were invited, and the League of Women Voters does not support or oppose any candidate or party. The League is open to men and women 18 years and older. You can go to our website, lwvabcmn.org, for more information. Both candidates for Senate District 31 are here tonight, Michelle Benson and Kate Luthner. Thank you for being here. We'll begin with 3 questions that the candidates were provided in advance. This will be followed by questions that were sent in on our website, and the candidates will alternate who answers each question first. Each answer is limited to 1 minute. So the first of the first questions, introductory questions. Michelle Benson, describe your background and community involvement.
First of all, I want to thank the League of Women Voters. This is a tradition. You do a very good job, so thank you. I currently serve as the Senator for District 31. My husband and I have lived here since 1996. This is where we raised our children, educated them, and built our home. I serve on the board at the Way of the Shepherd Montessori. I had been active in Scouts, but once your kids age out, it's time for you to move on to other things. So I'm also on the board at the Challenger Center. It's a foundation that helps bring space experiences to children who might not be able to go to space camp, and they are starting all over the country. We have one here in Minnesota. I'm a member of that. I also have the privilege of being involved with various church groups, including some that my daughter participates in for catechesis, et cetera. So stay pretty busy with my work in the legislature, and hope I have the opportunity to continue to serve.
Thank you. Kate Luthner, describe your background in community involvement.
Hi, my name is Kate Luthner, and again, thank you to the League of Women Voters. I emailed in that this was especially exciting because my grandmother was part of starting the League of Women Voters in New York, and we used to have to eat dinner early once a month because she had her meetings. So it's very exciting to get to this level of civic involvement because it's been part of my life since I can't even remember. I grew up in New York, but I moved here as a young adult, and I've been politically educated in Minnesota. I earned my BA previously to Minnesota, but then I went to the University of St. Thomas, and I currently serve on the Forest Lake Area School Board, and that's what really brought me into the greater area. And it's definitely a service position. Your school board members are almost volunteers. I go to as many things as I possibly can to support the community, which is very wide. And I've also worked with Civil Air Patrol, the Girl Scouts, I'm the cookie mom, and like you said, you get involved with so many things through your children and other civic groups around.
Thank you. Next, Kate Luthner, what are your qualifications for serving in the Senate, and why are you seeking the office?
Well, I originally prepared these almost to flow into each other, but I have studied government. That was my major in college. I've worked with campaigns. I've been campaigning for levies within the Forest Lake Area School District, which did pass. And then I've just kept on top of local politics, regional politics, national politics. I've met Senator Benson at the Capitol in her office talking. So I do not have I've been in the office, but you have to get there someday. And I was elected and have served for the school board. And I would just go and meet everybody. I love that. That's my favorite part. And the hardest about COVID times is that we can't just go meet every group and learn more. I've done the best I can via Zoom, but it's just not quite the same.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, what are your qualifications for serving in the Senate, and why are you seeking the office?
I think the primary qualification is wanting to be an involved citizen who seeks service first. So I hope that my life has demonstrated that I seek to serve. I hope that my time in the legislature has shown the people of the district that I do want to serve them, and I want to serve the people of Minnesota in ways that can be quite challenging. Why am I continuing to seek the office? I went through a hard decision process, because you shouldn't make politics your career. You should serve and then step back. But I did come to a decision that, particularly in the middle of a pandemic and in a budget deficit, I didn't want to walk away. I've gotten to the point where I feel like I'm a subject matter expert, that my service would be powerful in making sure Minnesota makes good decisions going forward. And so that is my commitment, to continue to serve and do my best to make good decisions.
Thank you. What are your short and long-term goals for your district and/or the state? Michelle Benson.
Short term, we need to find our way through an epidemic here, a global pandemic. We need to do so by making sure our hospitals are stable. We need our education system to function in a way that is safe for students and respectful of the needs of families and students, as well as protecting our teachers. Then we need to tackle the budget deficit. When I went into office the first time, we had a $5 billion deficit. I was part of the team that made decisions then. None of this will be easy. So short term, those are the things we have to face, but long term, those are important as well. How are we going to stimulate our economy? That will help with the budget deficit. How are we going to continue to meet the needs of our families? That will be a long-term goal in education. And then how do we maintain our nation-leading healthcare system? We are learning a lot in very stressful times, and we need to take all of those lessons and apply them going forward.
Thank you. Kate Luthner, what are your short and long-term goals for your district and/or the state?
As the kids say, same. I really agree. Our short-term goals are getting through COVID, getting the economy back on track, and how we do that is really, it changes almost day by day what is the most emergent problem. And I do respect that our government is working very hard to get us through that. I would join the effort. I would listen to the people, and that is the first goal. Longer term, I would love to see border-to-border broadband. I think it's been a lot of people's goal, but the current epidemic has really shown bigger gaps in equity, broadband being one of them. Kids can't go to school. People can't telecommute as easily as they could be able to. And that's a longer-term goal, but there's a lot of things to get done in the meantime.
Thank you. And now we'll move to the questions from the public. The first one, Kate Luthner, is, if elected, what would you do to provide a healthy business climate? And a second one that's kind of related, describe any experience you've had owning or supporting a business.
Okay, all in 1 minute.
Yeah.
So my experience in owning and running businesses, my father is an entrepreneur. He ran a practice. I helped every way I could, from as soon as I could stuff envelopes to answering the phone to doing the filing, and I still help him what I can from here, social media, things like that. So I understand what the sole entrepreneur and small business really is going through. There's some crazy jumps of taxes and things like that. I would love to just get simplification if possible. It's a complex system, but helping people through it, stimulating economy. Once we get through and we see where we are, I'd love to attract businesses that want to be in Minnesota. It's a great state. It's got really smart people. Our colleges are fantastic. So attracting a diverse group of businesses, from manufacturing to more esoteric, would be fabulous. And I also worked at Polaris Industries and an IBM subcontractor for many years in manufacturing.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, if elected, what would you do to provide a healthy business climate? And describe any experience you've had owning or supporting a business.
So start with the last part first.
Okay.
I grew up on a farm, which is a business. You have to balance your books. Year after year, you plant and hope and get paid when you harvest and hope things work out. My husband and I owned a business in Hugo. He was the majority shareholder. We struggled. We lost that business, but we made sure that we paid our employees and treated them fairly. And so I know what it's like to, have to face your employees every day and say, we are going to do this together. Something that I've learned through my time in the legislature, regulatory humility is really important for business owners. Having someone come in and tell you how to run your business, threaten you with fines, sanctions. So we need some regulatory humility. We need some tax relief for our businesses. We have some of the highest taxes in the United States. But also, we need to attract different kinds of businesses. Now, we are really good at med device, but we are at risk because China is the center of pharmaceutical manufacturing, and Minnesota needs to take some of that away from China, put it into our med device pipeline, and continue to lead in biopharmaceuticals.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, data shows that rates of tobacco use have skyrocketed in recent years, primarily due to flavored e-cigarettes. High vaping rates threaten our kids' health and are disrupting learning, especially in our middle and high schools. What steps should the Minnesota legislature take to address this epidemic?
Well, as you're aware, we just moved the tobacco age to 21. We followed the lead of Mitch McConnell, the Senate, the federal regulators to move tobacco age up to 21. That'll distance some of the high school challenges. One of the bigger problems isn't so much the flavor, it's the level of nicotine that is in each of the pods. You can take a tiny pod, take a couple of hits, and you've inhaled as much nicotine as a pack of cigarettes. So we can look at how we would ban flavored tobacco, but you're not going to go back to it unless you're addicted to it, regardless of what flavor's in it. And so if we could work on reducing the level of nicotine in the pods, I think we'd find that it'd be less attractive to kids.
Thank you. Kate Luthner, what steps should the Minnesota take to address the tobacco use in Minnesota?
And vaping, same question, right? Mm-hmm. Okay. So I had a question early on, why do people smoke? Because it's just gross. And it was explained by a smoker that because it gives you a 10-minute vacation and it helps your brain. It's like, okay, well, that is at least an explanation. And that has always brought to my mind that it's a mental health thing, not the addiction end of things, but why do we need breaks? And can we address that? And the fact that it's creeping more and more into our high schools, because it is, and middle schools, because it is, we need to address that both at the top end, I totally agree, but at the root cause, why? Why do you need this break? Why do you need this boost? Could we figure out some other method? And that's education. So that's schools, that's public announcements, and that's reasonably free to just get the information out there. Let's find another way.
Thank you. Next, let's look at some transportation. What do you see as the key transportation issues in our area? And how should roads, bridges, and mass transit be funded? Kate Luthner, you're first on this one.
Okay. How should they be funded is really tricky because there's a lot of different pipelines of money and there's a lot of different uses for that money. I think infrastructure is incredibly important because maintaining it is a whole lot less expensive than building it. And so we really do need to keep on top of our roads and bridges, especially our bridges, because we don't want any more to fall down, ever. And that's something that we learned from. And I know that MnDOT took that to heart and really revamped a lot of their regulations and was a country leader. So what we should do next in transportation, I would love more light rail. I'm not privy to all the reasons why it hasn't happened, but it does seem like an environmental and a commuter thing that would be fantastic. I don't know all the reasons why it hasn't. And that's one of the things that I'd just be very interested in learning some of why great ideas don't seem to make it all the way to the happening stage.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, what do you see as the key transportation issues in our area, and how should roads, bridges, and mass transit be funded?
For our district, which again has a lot of commuters in it, we want safety, and we want you to be able to get to and from work in a timely manner. Now, telecommuting is going to change some of that, and so we're going to have to make some different investments to make sure people can effectively telecommute. But let's make sure our roads are safe. The new bridge in Columbus was expanded because there was an obvious capacity need, and that had very bipartisan support in the legislature to get that passed. Bonding is an appropriate way to pay for roads and bridges. They are long-term investments with regional significance. That's a good criteria for bonding. The gas tax should fully go to roads and bridges. That is a reasonable commitment. And as far as light rail, I think a better use of transit dollars, not transportation dollars, transit dollars, would be bus rapid transit systems, because they're flexible and they're not so disruptive to traffic around them as light rail is.
Okay, thank you. We're in a pandemic. What is, when history looks back on this COVID pandemic, what do you hope will be remembered about the legislature and the role it played? Michelle Benson.
From before it was declared a WHO pandemic, the legislature was engaging to make sure our hospital systems were going to be ready. We knew that our nurses and other care providers, frontline workers, were going to need special protective equipment. We looked back at what was done for H1N1, pivoted a little bit. We looked back at SARS and MERS. We learned a lot from Ebola. We didn't have an Ebola case, but our hospitals learned a lot. Made sure that that was in place. We immediately moved on helping to get hotspots for students who were going to have to distance learn. We supported businesses who were going to have to shut down. And yes, they had federal PPE loans, but as they opened back up, they were going to need more support if they were going to survive. And so I hope the early stages of our collaboration and the renewed collaboration that we will have come January is what people will remember about the legislature.
Thank you. Kate Luthner, when history looks back at the current pandemic, what do you hope will be remembered about the legislature and the role it played?
I almost hope it's not remembered, because it's so non-remarkable because people usually remember disasters. I hope that it is bipartisan and stands together for everybody in Minnesota. And for the most part, I really feel like it has, but we still have to keep going. We're getting more and more divided, not necessarily in our districts, but at the national level, and that fire just creeps in, and it's exciting to have headlines. And I hope that we all, as considerate, caring Minnesotans, put our people and our health first and politics second. So that's what I hope is the remembrance. And I hope it's a little bit of a revolution, that we can move forward with a different way of doing things and a better way. Take what's best and keep it, and not always just reminisce about how it used to be.
Thank you. We're going to break this up a little bit now and try a few lightning round questions. Short answers. Now, I know that every issue, even if it looks obvious, is not. And I know you'll want to say more, but one word, one sentence, under 10 seconds, okay? So the first one, Kate, you'll have first. Do you support laws that require background checks on private gun sales and red flag laws which give law enforcement the ability to confiscate weapons from those believed to be at risk to themselves and others? Yes or no?
Yes.
Michelle Benson.
We already have the ability to take weapons from people who be a harm to themselves or others if they've gone through an adjudication process. A judge can order that, and one of the things that we could do is enforce
background checks.
Background checks, we have a good background check system if we link up to the federal background check system.
Next question, Michelle first. Do you believe people convicted of felonies who are living in the community, not imprisoned, should have their right to vote restored?
As we talked about earlier, workhouses are considered part of prison, but they're in the community, so we need to resolve that issue. I think the more important thing is probation and parole reform so that people don't have long-term on paper.
Kate Luthner, do you believe people convicted of felonies who are living in the community, not in prison, should have their right to vote restored?
Yes, with the same caveats, and I agree that we really need to look more carefully about who's in prison and for how long.
Kate, do you think that the statewide police reforms passed by the legislature this summer are moving Minnesota in the right direction?
In the right direction, yes. Knee-jerk reactions are usually never perfect. I think that it was a wake-up call, and we need to be very careful and deliberate about how we move forward.
Michelle Benson, do you think that the statewide police reforms passed by the legislature this summer are moving Minnesota in the right direction?
I think they're important changes to the way we do police training, and I think we'll keep improving them.
Next one, Michelle Benson. Which one issue do you think is the most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
For next year, I think it will be how we solve our budget deficit.
Kate Luthner, which one issue do you think is most important to work on with legislators across the aisle?
Same caveat next year, education, absolutely.
Thank you. Okay, let's go back to the 1-minute answers. And this will be Kate's first. What steps, if any, should the Minnesota legislature take to address climate change?
We are in an interesting position because we have such a natural resource full state. We have underground, above ground parks, and I think that we need to be protecting it. We need to be mindful about what we need to protect and how. And each case is individual, so we need to have politic-free, if possible, investigations onto what each thing and how it would affect. Does this pipeline negatively impact the environment in some ways, but does that outweigh the fact that it's replacing something that's leaking that is negatively impacting? Or is it just another pipeline and we have other options? So those are divergent paths. So I think we just need to be careful and move really towards a more energy non-reliance on fossil fuels, but it's a process.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, what steps, if any, should the Minnesota legislature take to address climate change?
Well, I think we're already taking significant steps just by the way we consume energy. Let me give you an example. Connexus Energy, that serves a large part of this region, has put up solar farms because they, as a consumer-driven energy producer, heard their members and responded. And so I think the way consumers behave is going to be really important in how we impact climate change. I have said from the very beginning of my service on the Energy Committee, we can take an all-of-the-above approach. It has to be reliable, it has to be reasonably priced, and it has to be respectful of the environment. If you can meet those three criteria, I believe Minnesota consumers will benefit.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, what can you as a legislator do to break the deadlock that seems to plague the process of passing major legislation?
It is a challenge, so we spent an entire day at the University of Minnesota trying to work on this. How do you get people to step back from brinksmanship? At the end, people seek leverage. I was telling you earlier, I was trying to pass a DHS policy bill that had been worked on for 4 years that contained significant provisions but was non-controversial. Somebody decided that was the time they were going to try to attach a marijuana amendment, and it took the bill down. We had to fight to bring it back. So if the people will say, stop with brinksmanship, then legislators will listen. But I tell you, the closer it gets to elections, the harder that gets.
Kate Luthner, what can you as could you as a legislator do to break the deadlock that seems to plague the process of passing major legislation?
Reach across the aisle. I was educated that that's how you do it. I always thought that was the way it was done, and then I started seeing how the sausage is made, even just from an outside perspective. And like you said, there was a lot of people who just were in it for themselves. So I think we need to be coalition builders. We need to walk down the hall and talk, possibly in a mask, possibly 6 feet away, but we need to keep our relationships across the board. I'm reading a book on Churchill right now, And he said some of his best friends were his biggest political rivals. And that's a great mark of intelligence and politics, that you can argue, but you're still friends. And I think that that's what we need in our legislative body. We are a great state. We have a lot of people with mostly the similar views. It's just the how that's usually different.
Thank you. Last question before we go to closing statements. Kate Luthner, what role do you see the Minnesota legislature playing in increasing affordable housing?
Affordable housing as in the state range, I think it needs to almost be a task force to see what each area needs, and not dictate from the top down, but use a bottom-up methodology. What does this area need, and how can we support that? Because too often there's mandates, like the unfunded mandates in education, that are very altruistic. They are to help children, but they didn't come with any funding, and they came as a mandate. And so mandating anything about housing will probably cause as many problems as it solves. So it would need to be a bottom-up approach, but I am definitely for housing security and working on this really big issue.
Thank you. Michelle Benson, what role do you see the legislature playing in increasing affordable housing?
And I just want to clarify, there are a couple of categories of affordable housing. There is the apartment type complex and townhomes built next to each other. Those are funded through housing bonds, and that is something the legislature regularly supports. It might not be as fast as advocates would like it to move, but it is regularly, housing bonds are regularly issued to help with affordable housing. If you're talking about single family homes being more affordable, we have stacked regulation upon regulation upon regulation that makes us thousands of dollars more expensive than our neighboring state of Wisconsin. And so pulling back some of the regulatory burden on home building without reducing the safety of those homes is really important to making family homes more affordable.
Thank you. Thank you, candidates, for speaking to voters about the issues facing us and for running for Senate District 31. Thank you to all watching for your interest in becoming informed voters. You will find links to all the Meet the Candidates forms on the LWV ABC website. You can request an absentee ballot right now on the Secretary of State's website, mnvotes.org, or go to your city hall to vote anytime after September 18th, which is now. You need to register, if you need to register to vote or update your registration, do that online until October 12th or when you go to vote. Make your voice heard in the general election by voting by November 3rd. Thank you so much, and stay healthy and safe. Did I skip your closing statement?
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
Okay.
Let's go back and do that. Michelle Benson, you're first.
Thank you. Well, again, I'd like to thank the League of Women Voters, the Ham Lake Chamber, NorthMetroTV, and of course, the folks at Ham Lake City Hall for making the venue available. And to everybody who's watching, thank you for taking time to get educated. Educated voters are effective voters. I hope that my background as a longtime member of the community, having been raised in Minnesota, my undergraduate degree in chemistry and my master's degree in business administration, along with my legislative experience, will show you that I have a background that is ready to continue serving you. As we face COVID, as we face a recession, as we face the deficit, I believe that I have the experience to be your voice, to make thoughtful, fact-based decisions. I hope that I've earned your trust and that I can help move forward your dreams as a family for education, for public safety, for balancing your family budget. I would appreciate your vote this November. It's an honor to serve you.
Thank you. Kate Luthner, your closing statement, please.
Thank you very much, everybody who attended today and everybody online. I ran this time because I am also a longtime Minnesota resident. I've seen many other states how they do it. I think we are very good, but I think we have opportunity to do better. And when we have many legislators who have served 10 years or more, that we do need to move forward with new people. I respect the work that's been done ahead of me. I also feel like we need to have just More changes, more people in office. This is a great time of change for Minnesota. It's a leadership opportunity. I will serve and I will lead. I am not a quiet voice. I do not stand by and let things pass by. I am heartened by how we have had the Me Too movement and the Black Lives Matter movement, and that Minnesota is not being passive. We need to keep that going, but we need to be respectful to everybody and take this as a leadership opportunity. And we might need to change some leadership to get there. Thank you.
Thank you. And maybe it's appropriate that you two had the last word.